heavenly prelude. What a heavenly moment. For this kind of moments I thank a lot, because yes, to listen to it, but to play it or attempt to is a privilege, a sheer jubilation. One can say that one spends all one's life when devoting to an instrument as the piano, to be able to play one day something, but not just for its sake, but for the sake to share. And my necessity of rubato with age has become more like an oscillation of an inner metronome of exhaling, inhaling, and just carrying it through some waves. Now, if I try to tell myself, as I would tell a student, not to add too much rubato at the get-go, and let the length of sound through the length of the melody bring the melodic line to its horizon point, syncopated, never louder after the long values, and then finally drop and use this decoration to go back by regaining energy, so that the resonance of the decay, it's always picked at its arrival point and risen again when you have short values. So you can sing in a legato fashion. Of course, you cannot sing with a piano. You can pretend to connect the vibration of resonances, but pianists are in denial that they can. And this very gentle ostinato, La flat stinato, which in the middle section harmonically will become so dark as a G sharp. And controversy is that it should be the same tempo as the sunny side of the prelude and the dark side. But also the low register is so haunting compared to the drop of this melodic arpeggio. The arpeggio is a melody, but thematically so. Beethoven has developed a lot. Between the melody note and the accompaniment note. As if the thumb of the left hand, sort of a viola part, they touch at the minor third. He hits an accompaniment melody as if it's secondary voice. An explicit dialogue with imitations that are so bluntly obvious. I think he's more subtle. I don't think it is the case. The beauty of practicing and sharing with you at this point is the repetitivity. And I find this repetitivity to be essential, because it's like concentric circles until you reach to a certain, let's say, truth. So you repeat a lot of times until you find the right atmosphere, which couldn't be too extroverted but not too introverted, but also voiced enough to flow and follow to the next note. And the more you replay it, the more you bathe in the atmosphere, and then the more you try waves and even try dynamic ranges. Besides the unicorda, if you play it with the right hand, or you play it softly inside the keys melody-wise, you want clarity, and the unicorda brings a little bit of a darker sound. So a lot of the melody's quality is in the accompaniment quality. It sets that beautiful background, but at the same time this repeated note needs to be repeated under the escapement, so it repeats only with a vowel, ta ha 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 ha, not ta 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 ta. Pushing quickly deep inside from the half of the key up, not fully up. You could almost think it's a prelude for left hand by Chopin, with the right hand, the diva. You notice the more I replay the opening until I find the harmony between expectation and result in the output, the least I play unicorda and the least I play rubato. When in performance, because often pianos are very big for projecting purposes, it's tempting to put the unicorda because it makes it more dark, more wrapped as a sound. And so you end up by working on the sound quality, as if the sounds are there for their own sake, when in fact they're there for the purpose to tell a storytelling, a narrative storytelling. It's not so much written, of course it is written, but I think it's more improvised. With a meaning in the syllables that are suggested, which anybody can imagine what they mean to themselves. But if I do add the rubato, disrupt the calm, almost metronomic calm, by doing the phrasing inside the repeated notes. And you wonder also, if it starts on the tonic, it's already starting with an affirmation. It's almost as if it's the end of the piece. And then goes up to the dominant melodically, passes to the 6/4, to again the dominant, this time with a major ninth, which is so much brighter. And then a perfect cadence, but always on the dominant pedal. And this gruppetto, we call it in French, when Chopin writes more notes than space, as all of a sudden he gets driven to, in a narration, to tell everything there is to be said in one breath. as if there is an emergency, an urgency to say it. And it's difficult to apply a rubato there, because either you try to be rhythmical, in which case it sounds obviously rushed. And if you do the wider, flexible bar lines, you extend your bar, you sort of suspend yourself on the fourth beat, and let the diva do its her vocalise. That thankfully is not defined in the notation, so it's sort of a signature of the intimate or the psychology of the performer. It's something that is not to be defined objectively. You could do 3 and then 4, and then with a grace note, even more uplifting on the get-go, and then slow down at the end, or the opposite. But the difficult thing is not to feel free, is to feel meaningful in the way you will bridge from that third beat to the next first beat. Which restarts the opening bar. In the very first bar, we don't have a cadenza. It just goes. And I believe it has to re-articulate to restart on the downbeat, on the F in the melody, as it did in the opening bar. Catch the breath and release it slowly. Now in a slow tempo, one loses the rhythmic aspect of the syncopation because of the large values in the melody. If the tempo was faster, but it would gain in its readability, in its agogic, in its punctuation of the storytelling. You can not so much stretch the vowels that you lose the point. And to find a tempo that brings both the left hand to be pulsing with these ostinatos calmly inside the keys, and the melody to stretch until it's decay and pick it at the level of it dropping and then re-rising. It's almost as if you enter in another dimension of time. Of course the pedal helps, but the right foot, I mean. But I still think that if we take into account the whole piece, and he doesn't mark any faster in the middle section, in minor, it is not the same structure for the melodic lines rhythmic pattern, because here we have only quarter notes without rhythm, just on each beat. It feels, sorry for this, it feels as if a very subtle faster tempo should occur at the departure switch from major to minor, when he lets it hang on the dominant, and then 2, 3, and here, and then stay on it, don't rush after more. It's very subtle if possible, not yet. of the ostinato becomes like infernal moment. You start from heaven and you reach the moments of tragic heroism in this minor section compared to the heavenly floating major section. And I believe that it is not wrong to accept that one can do slightly faster tempo or less slow rather, in order to have a sense of direction again for those quarter notes in the left hand. To the third page, before the brief recap, there is a moment where you have to play these deep chords, very Beethovenian, Schubertian for Mozart's tastes already. They developed further, and Chopin seems to look back in the mirror of time between Schubert and Beethoven, but with that also elegance of Mozart. I feel like Chopin looks a lot on the early 19th century and late 18th century. And this side of chorale rises. Is almost like church music. It sounds more like motets of the Renaissance. At least how Chopin thought it would be, so relatively austere compared to harmonies that could be more painful. A lot of fourths and fifths. Only half a bar before the return in major to reconnect with the original tempo, provided after all this dramatic effect of the middle section one gets back to remember while performing the original tempo, as if it's memorized somewhere. Would come handy in the A prime in the return, is because this way it brings a little bit of a progressively calming down into the slower tempo, not just drop step at once, and so it gives the illusion that you're still in the flow of what preceded, and not, but immediately by this slowly spoken eloquent syllables. Two and three, a little bit less slow. And then again. I overindulge. I could almost put it in the... But then at the end it needs to be relaxed. How much you plan, prepare, repeat, organize, there is a level of unexpected that happens at the performance. In a way, the piece tells you what to do. Even with the creative voicing, you want to make it say something that perhaps it wasn't meant to. I still find that this kind of very simple in terms of texture prelude compared to the others, which are more intense, dense, and complex. It leaves even more room for speculation for the tempo. It's not cut time, therefore it's not fast. But it has to have a 4-bar phrase. 1, second bar is still on the ascension. Third bar, with the syncopation of the dominant with the 9. Fourth bar, returning to the tonic, extending that fourth beat and reintegrating the tempo. And with the rubato, you can be slightly forward. Most of the rubato is usually with tenuto. Here, I think a lot of it is also accelerando, but very small accelerando. Just naming it is an exaggeration. But nevertheless, the 8th notes that are flowing should not be static. How much is too much? How much is not enough? It's a life story of search. Relative minor. And he repeats a lot of times these short expressions of tenderness, of hope, in relative major or in relative minor. He uses a lot of the harmony for mood setting, even if the song per se is very similar when it goes to minor. So it should be a very subtle, not over-dramatization of the relative minor, because of the middle section minor. Menacing and the middle section is almost a piece of its own, and the fact that it's attached to the A and A prime gives it it's an abyss of depth of emotional austere self-search. And these repeated notes, which were so heavenly in the opening, become obsessively like some kind of trumpet of end of times. You wish he changed. No, he doesn't. What is also significant in order to make the right choices intuitively or analytically is that the whole piece is very short. Of course, it doesn't appear so when you practice by repeating and replaying each section until you find in these concentric circles until which point you reach that level of unison between your intuitive hearing and what you produce. But then in reality, you don't do that. When you perform the piece, it has its own space it takes between the other preludes if you play them all, or even by itself. And so the proportions and the structure are the mystery of the composers. The visionary ideas they have, like blueprint architects who visualize the building without yet being built. And I find that the beauty of it here is that it remains, apparently when you perform it, improvised, when in fact every structural group of bars brings its own brick to the monument, if you want, musically. And in a way that's reassuring, and in a way it's frightening, because it becomes obsessive in its like large steps, and nothing can stop it, especially when it becomes dramatic compared to So who defines the good taste for the rubato, for the color, for the projection, for the direction, for the pacing, for the phrasing, for the sound, color, quality of the melody versus the ostinato? At which point do we get into becoming simple? At which point do we get overly sophisticated to detect every detail and still follow their thought process forward to the end of the sentence with a sense of artificial natural feeling? Because obviously being stretched, it's harder to convey, and because you're not allowed to drop in the middle, you have to have this very slow arc. Probably the combination of all this blossoms in a moment where all of these synergy, all of that merges into a blossoming moment. And no matter how much you've practiced it, or because of how much you've practiced it, then when you perform it, you let it be. And you take that risk not to be overly controlling in terms of what and where, but let the music dictate you. This is a gift that keeps on giving, constantly marveling in a way, and this modulation. Of course you know it. You don't fake that you're surprised, but it's so beautiful that in fact it can disarm you by its beauty, even if you're aware of it. So you have to keep cool head while the fingers do some of the autopilot, but you have to be always as a vista, imagining where you want to bring your melodic line. And perhaps a piano answers with a different way, the sound, the length, the whole, the acoustic, everything is to be taken in account, but during the performance is only what you can produce with the tip of your fingers from your ear and your soul. And your head coolly organizes the balance between the bottom notes and the high notes and the length of sounds. And sometimes you're surprised positively that it comes out differently than you expected, but it's not that bad, because you don't know that, because you don't evaluate during the performance. You're there always ahead in the motion, driving, allowing to have a little bit of contemplative feeling, but you're still on the driving seat. It's not a passive playing, it's very active playing, but allowing the piece to unveil its beautiful fragrances in front of you, for you and your audience. It's like, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen, how beautiful this is? I don't need to overstate it, but I need to put my level of expression over it or within it. My sub-sentences, my main sentence, my suspended note expecting. That remains always a mystery, how at the end of all the preparation, the piece speaks itself, and you just hope to hold with it. Since you don't want to mess up the beauty of the piece, you want to serve the piece, and the piece in a way talks to you. It's almost a dialogue between the conductor and an orchestra, the piece and the pianist, and the combination of the two projected for the audience. Thank you.